Hello, I'm Li Ling, and I'm so glad you're here. I'll be sharing with you my thoughts on parenting mindfully. Whether you're an expecting parent who is curious about mindful parenting because you're thinking about the parent that you would like to be when your baby arrives, or a parent of multiple children who needs to reset and recenter, I hope you'll find some takeaways from this talk that will be helpful in your parenting journey. I like to start with a little story about how I came to know about and care about mindful parenting. When my firstborn was about a year old, we were living overseas, and for about a week, my husband had gone back to Singapore for work. I was alone taking care of my daughter without help and company. Most of that week is now a blur to me, but I remember one particular incident where I was trying to cook a meal for us, and she was clinging to my legs, crying incessantly. I couldn't calm her, and my tank was running empty. I became increasingly frustrated and helpless. I started shouting at her to tell me what she wants, which she of course couldn't, and my behavior only frightened her more and intensified her crying. I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, I was dysregulated to the point where I had an urge to hurt her physically. That scared me because the pictures in my head were ugly. Of course, my rational brain didn't want to hurt her, and it took everything in me to fight those urges. I remember standing in front of her while she cried on the couch when, in the middle of me battling my urges, I suddenly had a very visceral flashback. I saw myself as a little girl who was about 5 or 6, and I was crying while sitting on the kitchen countertop. My father had put me there. He towered over me and he shouted at me to stop crying. You stop crying now or you'll get it. It being physical punishment. This is a memory that I have always remembered, along with many other similar experiences I had growing up. I did not think of this encounter as one that stood out from the many other times that my parents told me to stop crying or punished me physically. And yet in that flashback, I felt for the first time how terrified my 5-year-old self was. And also how out of control my father seemed, and how much I struggled to suppress my cries in order to avoid pain. When I came out of that flashback, my daughter was still crying, but I was no longer as triggered. Suddenly I understood why I became so dysregulated from hearing her cries and even had those urges to hurt her. It just clicked. My flashback helped me realize that her cries were so hard for me to listen to because I was not allowed to cry when I was growing up. And in fact, crying often led to a very real threat of emotional, mental, and even physical pain. After that episode, I became very interested in learning more about my strange flashback experience and how my childhood was clearly affecting my present as a parent. This led me to a book by Dr. Dan Siegel called Parenting from the Inside Out. One of my biggest takeaways from the book is this quote: "When parents don't take responsibility for their own unfinished business, they miss an opportunity not only to become better parents, but also to continue their own development." I realized that I was making my daughter responsible for my discomfort and my dysregulation when I need to be the person who takes responsibility for my own feelings and needs. My triggers stem from my unresolved childhood issues. So a big part of mindful parenting is therefore to become aware of what our own triggers are, so that instead of operating on autopilot, acting out past hurts and unfairly directing our anger on our children and the people in our lives, we can be more present and intentional in choosing to respond to our children in a way that prioritizes the relationship and connection. This is what I care about a lot, and it fills me with meaning to be able to share this with other parents. So how do we as parents become more mindful? When I attended a life-changing course 3 years ago, my trainer summarized mindfulness in just 2 words. Just notice. It's one of those mantras that is deceptively simple, but actually hard to do, and yet holds infinite wisdom. Over the years, through some trial and error and learning from teachers who have crossed my path, including my children, who are my greatest teachers, I found a few practices that help me to just notice. I'd like to share 3 with you so that we can find more presence on our parenting journeys. For the first practice, I'd like to invite you to join me in a short embodiment exercise. First, find a comfortable position, either seated or lying down or even standing. If you'd like to, you can close your eyes so that you can channel your focus inwards. Notice how your body feels in this position. Now hold your hands in front of your chest and ball your fists up as tightly as you can and hold that posture. Notice the sensations in your body. Where in your body do you feel tightness? What other sensations do you notice? What do you notice about your breathing and your heart rate? Now relax your fists and allow your palms to open, facing upwards. Notice the sensations in your body. Do you notice any change in tension and openness in different parts of your body? Notice your breathing and your heart rate. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. How was that for you? I wonder if you noticed any differences within your body when you were clenching your fists and when your hands were relaxed and open. In the former, many people notice tightness not just in their hands but also in their shoulders, their chest, throat, even their head. Some people feel their fingernails pressing into the flesh of their palms. And when you took the open palm gesture, how did that feel? Did you notice the tension dissipate? And maybe even notice that you're able to take deeper, slower breaths? This exercise is related to the first practice in noticing that I'd like to share with you. It is to start becoming more aware of our bodies and our physiological cues. There's a word for this. It's called interoception. Interoception is the awareness of what's going on inside our body. Do you feel tension, pain, discomfort? Is your heart beating fast? Are your breaths shallow? Are you hungry, full? Do you need to use the bathroom? And so on. There are receptors in our joints, our muscles, organs, skin, and these receptors send information to our brain, which in turn regulates our vital functions such as our heart rate, our digestion, hunger, and body temperature. Interoception also helps us to be more attuned to our body's cues so that we can better interpret and identify our emotions. Many people are disconnected from their emotions and bodily sensations, perhaps because of years of conditioning from society where we were taught to tune out our sensations and emotions because those things are seen as inconveniences. I remember a friend told me once that her son complained of tummy aches before swim class. And he was told by the coach that if he didn't join the class, that he must be a girl and that he can come to class next week in a dress. Hearing that, the boy joined the class despite his tummy aches. You may not have heard these exact same shaming words when you were growing up, but you probably have received similar messages that taught you over time that your bodily sensations and your feelings are not as important as other things deemed important by society, like school, work, results. It may have sounded more benign, like a parent telling you to eat more even though you've told her or him that you're full. Over time, we learn to tune out the messages that we receive from our brain body, and many of us become quite the expert at doing that. Not eating, not sleeping, not drinking water, not using the toilet, and these things become almost like badges of honor that we boast about to friends and family. As a result, many people are no longer attuned to our interoceptive sense, and we become desensitized to our sensations and emotions. As parents, our interoceptive sense acts like an oximeter. Many of us have oximeters in our homes these days to measure our oxygen levels and our pulse rate. When our oxygen drops below a certain level, we know we have to consult a doctor. Similarly, our interoceptive sense is like our inbuilt oximeter that sends us signals so that we are more aware of our mental, emotional, and physical state. Simply put, this is helpful to us as parents because it lets us know at any moment, am I calm or am I stressed? When we did the exercise earlier, did you notice the sensations in your body when you clenched your fists? Those sensations might be similar to what you feel when you are under stress. The openness and the lightness that you felt when you held your palms open might be closer to what it feels like in your body when you're calm. I try to check in with how I'm feeling in my body when I'm with my children. Sometimes I notice that in reaction to something that they have done or said, my chest and shoulders tighten, my heart beats faster, and my breathing becomes shallow. These are my cues that inform me that I'm stressed and I might be becoming dysregulated. If I don't take steps to regulate myself before I respond, it's very likely that my autopilot reaction to their behavior will be from my conditioning. I might shout or say hurtful things to them. Instead of helping them to calm down, I will be escalating their distress or their hyperarousal. On the other hand, if I check in and notice that my body feels relaxed and my heart rate and breathing are normal, these signal to me that I'm calm. In this regulated state, I have more capacity to choose a response that is different from my autopilot reaction. A response that fosters more connection and will help to lower the arousal levels of my children so that they can become regulated too. This is important because calm begets calm. We can't help our children to calm down if we ourselves are not. So get to know your body's signals. What does stress feel like in your body? And what does calm feel like? We're all different, and each of us will have to get to know our own body and its cues if we have conditioned ourselves to ignore our sensations and emotions. We're all different, and each of us will have to get to know our own body and its cues, especially if we have conditioned ourselves to ignore our sensations and emotions. So the first practice in parenting more mindfully is to check in with our interoceptive sense. What is my body telling me about my current state? Am I calm? Or am I stressed? The next practice is to ask, what am I telling myself? Let me share a story as an example. So some time ago, I became very angry when we were packing up the house and my older daughter was lying on the floor, refusing to participate. It's not the first time I've gotten upset when the house is in a mess, but this time I was way past upset. I was not in a regulated state and I did not notice my signs. When I saw her lying on the floor, I became increasingly angry, and the thought that kept surfacing in my mind was that she is lazy and inconsiderate. My anger escalated and I blurted to her, "You're so useless." The moment those words escaped me, I saw her face and her body collapse in shame, and I was instantly reminded of the shame that ate me up when I was young, and when my father said in dialect that I was a waste of rice. Again, I had unfairly passed on the pain of my childhood to my daughter, and perhaps my father said those words because he was told the same when he was growing up. As a society, we commonly blame others for our own uncomfortable feelings, and many of us may have borne the brunt of our parents' anger when we were young. I find these words by Dr. Marshall Rosenberg very helpful as a reminder. What others do may be the stimulus of our feelings, but never the cause. Our children's words and actions do not cause our feelings. Our feelings are often a result of what we tell ourselves about their words and actions. In the previous story, I told myself that she is lazy and inconsiderate, which triggered my anger. On a different day, when I am more regulated, I might look at the same behavior, and instead of seeing laziness, I might see tiredness. And then my response to her would be one that is more compassionate. The second practice is therefore to just notice what we are telling ourselves. When I notice my thoughts, I frame it with, I'm telling myself that. This is a way to remind myself that what comes after is just what I'm telling myself. It is my assumption and not necessarily reality. This practice helps me to create some distance between my children's behaviors, the stimulus, and my feelings. The distance gives me space to check my assumptions and put on a lens that is more curious and compassionate. This is what I'm telling myself, but what is she really feeling and needing? Is her behavior truly out of laziness, or could it be that she is experiencing some stress and has needs that are not met? It could also give me room to recognize that I have needs that are not met, and my feelings are more a reflection of my own needs for rest and support. The third practice in noticing is to get to know yourself better and recognize your triggers. As you practice noticing your interoceptive sense and the stories you tell yourself, you might find that there are certain recurring patterns in the behaviors and situations that tend to disrupt your peace. These are your triggers. For me, some of my triggers are mess and crying, as you may have noticed in the stories that I've shared. Learning what our triggers are can help us to, number one, prevent problems, and number two, manage our own reactivity. Let me explain. If you know that certain things tend to be triggering for you, then you can find solutions to prevent things from escalating. So for example, some people are triggered by lateness, and so the morning rush to leave home, send children to school on time and get to work on time tend to really rock some parents' patience and equanimity. If you know that lateness is your trigger, then you might find ways to reduce the need to rush in the morning, like choosing your clothes and making sure that all bags and things are packed the night before, having breakfasts that maybe can be eaten on the go, and so on. And if you know that you are easily triggered when you are worried about being late, then you will mentally prepare yourself so that you are already on the lookout for your alarm bells. Those are the signals from your body, your interoceptive sense, and the common stories that you tell yourself, like, if I walk into the office late, everyone will stare at me with those eyes that are judging me for being irresponsible. The more you practice noticing the signals in your body and the stories that you play in your head, the more you'd be able to pick up behaviors and situations that tend to trigger you. So the third practice brings together the first two practices. All three practices are really about getting to know ourselves better and on a much deeper level. They help us to become more mindful of ourselves, and as parents, this mindfulness is the door to more peace, connection, and compassion in our relationships with our children. I've shared 3 practices, and I'd like to just share one more note before we end, which is that mindful parenting is a journey and not a destination. There's no end point where you get to and now you're an expert who have mastered mindfulness and you never lose your temper ever again, and life with your children looks like a commercial with warm sunlight and everyone is always smiling, laughing and happy, and there's clean clothes on every child. As I spoke about these practices, I caught myself feeling guilt and shame because I'm not always successful at doing these things myself. I have to remind myself often that mindful parenting is a journey and that along the way we are going to have ups and downs, and it might sometimes feel like we're taking 1 step forward and 2 steps back, or it sometimes feels like we're stuck in a rut and we need to do something to restart and recenter. So please have compassion for yourself and take time to celebrate your little successes, because we tend to beat ourselves up too much for our mistakes. Remember the experiential exercise where you clenched your fists tightly and then you opened your palms? Let's do one more with our hands. Place your hands on your chest, your palms on your chest. Notice the sensations in your body. What's your breath like? Where do you feel tight or open in your body? I'm curious how that felt for you. Many people feel a softening in their body and a warmth in their chest. Perhaps your breathing and heart rate slowed down. This is how giving ourselves compassion might feel like. As you strive to grow as a person and become better parents, take time often to come to this place. and to notice your needs. Your needs for rest, support, kindness, compassion, understanding, acceptance, and fun. As you strive to grow as a person and become better parents, take time often to come to this place and to notice your needs for rest, support, kindness, compassion, understanding, acceptance, and fun. Bringing mindfulness into my parenting has brought so much meaning and growth to me personally and my relationships with my children and my husband. I hope you found some helpful takeaways that can be stepping stones in your mindful parenting journey. I appreciate you taking time to listen to me, and I hope this met your need for learning, growth, or connection to yourself. If you'd like to join a community of parents who are also on this journey of parenting mindfully, you can join the Facebook group supported by Chapter 0, Respectful Mindful Parenting SG. If you follow Chapter 0's Instagram and Facebook accounts, you can get tips and tools that we share regularly on parenting. And finally, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Chapter 0 is a team of 4 women who are passionate about contributing to parents so that more families can experience the joy of peaceful partnerships with their children. I wish you all the best on your parenting journey.